Tonight, 3 commuters rescued from bandits in Kaduna State, but 2 people are killed in Kajuru local government area. Police in Zamfara State set up special force team to execute extraordinary measures announced last week by the state governor, Bello Matawale. Federal Ministry of Labour rejects 21-day ultimatum issued by striking resident doctors, says NARD position is at variance with the timeline stated in the Memorandum of Agreement. And U.S. military says it has eliminated an imminent threat to Kabul airport as last UK troops leave Afghanistan. Plus sports news. We begin tonight with good news from northwest Nigeria, where in Kaduna State, 3 travelers have been rescued by troops of Operation Safe Haven. The passengers were traveling along the Gidanwaya Godo Road in Jema, a local government area of the state, before being abducted by the bandits who barricaded the road. Troops, however, came to the rescue on getting a distress call. They pursued the bandits, rescued the travelers, and recovered the vehicle they were traveling in. Unfortunately, some residents of Makoroiri village of Kajuru local government area of the state were not so lucky. 2 of them were killed by bandits during an attack on the community. According to the State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arawan, the bandits invaded the remote village and shot dead the duo identified as Gideon Mumini and Barnabas Ezra. Meanwhile, the governor, Nasir El-Rufai, has noted with sadness the report of the attack in Makoroiri village and praise for the repose of the victims' souls as he sends his condolences to their families. It's been a black Sunday also for the family of Senator representing Kebbi South Senatorial District, Bala Naala, whose son has been killed. The deceased, a pilot, was killed at his Malali residence in Kaduna Metropolis. An aide of the lawmaker told Channels Television that 36-year-old Abdul Karim Bala Naalad was found killed in his room. Staying with security, this time in Zamfara State, as part of efforts to curtail the activities of bandits and kidnappers, the police have announced plans to enforce the new security measures introduced by the state government to address the security challenges bedeviling the state. Speaking at a news conference in Gusau, the state capital, the state police commissioner, Ayuba Elkanah, warns residents to comply with the new directives, as anyone caught flouting the directives will be made to face the full wrath of the law. The new security measures by the state government include the ban on movement of cattle, beverages and some select food items within and outside the state without security checks, in addition to the use of covered tricycles.
I want to use this opportunity to inform the good people of the state that the police, in collaboration with other security agencies, are fully ready and have since commenced action to ensure full compliance with the directives. By tomorrow, Monday, we are going to constitute a joint task force which will be responsible for the full enforcement of the directives. Let me warn everyone that government and security agencies are very serious in their quest to end the lingering security challenges in the state. And therefore, the need to comply with the decision is very necessary. We will not tolerate any attempt by any person or group of persons to contravene any of these measures, as we are fully committed to ensure that full wrath of the law is applied to offenders. I equally want to encourage everybody, irrespective of political affiliation, to key into the ongoing crime prevention measures initiated to collectively rid the state of activities of unscrupulous elements. It is also paramount to state categorically that the new security measures were not politically motivated, but for the best interest of the state.
Insecurity, bad governance, inadequate public enlightenment are some of the major factors suggested as responsible for the low turnout of eligible persons to enroll in the ongoing voter registration exercise still in Zamfara State. Improved security is one of the solutions speakers proffered during a brainstorming session convened by civil society organizations in the state. They are confident it will address some of the other challenges.
These are members of various civil society organizations, as well as religious and interest groups who have converged on Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, to sensitize Nigerians on the ongoing voter registration exercise. They are concerned about the low turnout of eligible Nigerians to register ahead of the 2023 general elections and are seeking solutions to the problem.
What happened recently in 2019 general election, the INEC has said it over the media that there is a very low turnout in the continuous voter registration, and as I can see that they said this is the lowest participation in the general election and even in the continuous voter registration. So we felt that it's very necessary to invite the relevant stakeholders here so that we will now know what is the solution for that problem so that we will not face the same problem again.
According to the representative of the Christian Association of Nigeria, insecurity is one of the major factors responsible for the low turnout of eligible persons to participate in the ongoing voter registration exercise. He wants government at all levels to rise up to the fight against insecurity, stressing that this would encourage citizens to key into government's policies and programs for the development of the country. The state chairman of the African Democratic Congress also blames the poor turnout of eligible Nigerians for the exercise on inadequate public enlightenment.
Sometimes to go out and register may not be as easy as that, especially in the remote area like Emaro local government, for instance, where we have large number of Christians in those areas. They find it difficult to go out to register because of security challenges. Number one part of it is that the masses feel they are not being concerned by the political elite. So what is the importance of me going out to register?
We told them the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, especially trying to carry the citizen along, educating the citizen, informing the citizen their civic responsibility, because they engage themselves in renewing party membership card, which to us is not important than voters registration.
The stakeholders have resolved to go back to their various constituencies and sensitize as well as mobilize eligible Nigerians to participate in the ongoing voter registration and take advantage of the online platform provided by the Independent National Electoral Commission to register.
To party politics now. More information has been emerging from Saturday's National Executive Committee meeting of the main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party. The chairman of the Board of Trustees, Senator Walid Jibrin, has been speaking about the crisis rocking the party and the plans to resolve issues without heading for a constitutional crisis. He said there are plans to humiliate Prince Uche Secondus out of office. Senator Jibrin was guest in our political program, Sunday Politics.
I think it's premature for us now, for anybody to think that we have already earmarked the dismissal or condemnation of Secondus. You could see in our discussion headed by the BOT, the governors, former governors, former ministers, members of the House of, Senate and House of Representatives, we have met and make sure that we have to scrutinize and make sure we look at the areas and that will assist us to make progress and for our party to not only win the 2023 election, but to be fully acceptable. Before we go into this business, we must have look at areas that are not allowed, areas that will kill us, areas that will not help us. It's right for you to say there are some congresses that have to take place to come out with the qualities and come out with the condition. Annexed has set conditions that we must follow. And I assure you, we are not unforgettable of these qualities of conditions set for us. That's why we have decided to hold this convention in October.
Walid Jibrin explaining the crisis rocking the party and how there are no plans to humiliate Prince Uche Secondus out of office. To Anambra State now, where political parties are stepping up their game ahead of November's 6th governorship election. They're canvassing for votes in 3 senatorial zones of the 326 wards in the 21 local government areas of the state. Yaga Africa and the National Democratic Institute are, however, calling for a free and fair exercise.
The drive to get the people's mandate continues as the state chairman of Labour Party from FCT, Abuja, Ogun and Delta joined their Anambra state counterpart and the national chairman to address the teeming supporters of the party at the All Saints Cathedral Field, Onitsha, Anambra State. The crowd is overwhelming as hundreds of supporters chant the Labour Party slogan and dance to the campaign music, waving their flags as a sign of support to the party and its flag bearer. For the candidates of the party, it's time to care for everybody, create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, engage in human capital development and empower the youth.
By that it means establishing worthy infrastructure, fixing the dilapidated roads, working on the health sector, education, agriculture and what have you, and security also.
According to the national chairman, the Labour Party is on a rescue mission, and he berates politicians for their selfishness, according to him, and insists enough is enough of continued exploitation of the masses and appropriation of state resources to themselves.
The reason you see them fight and struggle for the #1 seat of the state is not because of your development or the development of the people. It's because of the money they want to share. And therefore, the people here today is sending a signal that Labour Party is ready for governance.
As politicians canvass for votes, some civil society organizations have commenced discussions on pre-election observations that include voter education, effective media reportage, deployments, electoral violence and violence against women in politics, as well as security concerns.
These pre-election activities consist of observing the activities of security agents, observing the activities of political parties, observing campaigns, and violence monitoring.
Everything needs to be done to address, security challenges. The government is doing, the very best they can, but we are primarily concerned with ensuring that the November 6th governorship election in Anambra State, is peaceful, free, fair and credible.
The atmosphere in Anambra State appears calm as political parties and various stakeholders in the electioneering process go about their business peacefully. Civil society organizations are optimistic that the November 6th governorship election will be devoid of violence if the current tempo is sustained.
Part 2 after the break. We're taking a look at some of the potentials and challenges of water transportation in the nation's commercial capital as authorities ask residents to use that mode of transportation more frequently. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 2 people killed in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State while troops rescue 3 commuters from bandits. Special force team set up by the police in Zamfara State to execute extraordinary measures as announced last week by the state governor, Bello Matawale. Federal Ministry of Labour rejects 21-day ultimatum issued by striking resident doctors. Says NARD position is at variance with the timeline stated in the Memorandum of Agreement. And as last US-UK troops leave Afghanistan, US military says it has eliminated an imminent threat to Kabul airport. There's one more story about security in the north. Recent rescue and release of abducted persons in some parts of the northwest has been described as a good signal in arresting the spate of abductions in the region. Two security experts, Group Captain Sadiq Shehu and Mr. Kabiru Adamu, today share their views on how to sustain efforts in stopping the growing abduction trade of the bandits. They were both guests on Sunday Politics.
I always, sympathize with the security forces, whether it is the military, whether it is the police, whether it is the DSS. They are operating below capacity for so many reasons. So the government should not, we should not assume that the security forces are having all that they require, to carry out this operation. If you look at the large expanse of land or large expanse of forest where the security forces are operating, without mobility assets, without communication assets, without even boots on the ground, enough boots on the ground, it is really, really a Herculean task. Sometimes in these areas, if these people seize people and enter, it is like looking for a needle in a haystack. So while rejoicing with the relative success we are having, we are not yet there. And I will continue to call for more capacity building for the armed forces. One thing to note is that when a kidnap has taken place, the best time or the highest success is immediately after the kidnap, if you are going to recover. If the people have a very long head start, it becomes more difficult for you, because even if you know where they are, maybe they have taken a defensive position, and remember they are holding valuable property, your children, your wives. So even the tactics you are going to use, or the methods, you do not have unlimited tactics. You have to select very well.
Two things are very important: intelligence, and then the use of our tactical units. The over 9 law enforcement and the military departments have tactical units. There is nothing wrong with us using intelligence to identify the camps of these bandits, and then using tactical units to take out the leadership of those bandits. The Americans came here and showed us how it's done in Sokoto. We can do it, and we need to do it. We pay money to these departments. They need to justify this money that we pay to them. All the tactical units they have. With regards to the situation in the northeast, it's a good development, I agree. When you are dealing with about 9,000, as it were, members of these two groups, and all of a sudden about 1,000 plus of them are surrendering, then you have less to deal with. The good thing is we already have a program in place, the Operation Safe Corridor.
To transportation, and here in Lagos, the state government is confident that more residents using the waterways will take the burden off the roads. The General Manager of the State Waterways Authority, Mr. Oluwadamilola Emmanuel, says this is why the government is investing in water transportation and welcomes partners to join the sector. Our correspondent, Titilayo Aberewu, reports.
Lagos is one of the coastline states comprising 65% of water and 35% of land. The waterways is an alternative means of transportation with 34 routes connecting different parts of Lagos. But it appears underutilized, a gap that puts pressure on road transportation, leading to traffic gridlock and loss of man hours. As good an option as water transportation is, those who use it regularly believe it can be better.
With the help of the agency, water transportation has enhanced more transportation movements for Lagosians on the waterways. It has really helped people to move from one point to another, like from Ikorodu to the highland.
The government is doing its bit. We still lack ferry beginning to work, but I think there is more to be done.
Some of the private operators have been in the sector for over 10 years and they share their experiences.
Number one, we charge only 1,000 for each trip. Then, where we need government help, number one, the spare parts we are buying is very, very expensive. We want to buy new boats, a standard boat that is befitting us than this one. So, if they can finance us, we are ready to move. Because this one now costs nothing less than 7 million now.
Very lucrative, but of course also very demanding. It's a business that is capital intensive, and at the same time it is hinged on maintenance. Like all transport businesses, is hinged on maintenance majorly. So, and aside that, it's also a business that is run by the Forex, because mostly everything that is used, from the building of the boat to the engine to the profiling, everything is from outside the country.
Ikorodu is one of the areas in Lagos where water transportation is thriving because of traffic congestion on the road. Right now I'm at Ikorodu Ferry Terminal, about to take a boat ride to my next destination, Falomo. The State Waterways Authority is aware of the challenges faced by the private operators, and the General Manager tells us what government is doing to address the issues.
Water transportation was contributing about 2%, and as we speak, I can say that it's gradually risen to 5%, but we're still not where we want to be, because I'm sure you know 5% is still a low number, and that's why we'll continue to improve and make sure that we get it to as much as 10 to 20%. But one of the critical things is safety. We do a biannual inspection in the Lagos State Waterways Authority, where we inspect their boats twice a year. We also, beyond that biannual inspection, we also do our random checks, and we encourage a lot of whistleblowing. So we tell passengers, if you see anything, if you notice any complaints, our hotlines are there. You can reach us by email as well.
We proceed to Lac Ferry office at Mile 2 to know the efforts of the government to drive the water transportation system.
Of the 20 boats that we are having now, 19 passenger boats, on daily basis, we make about 41 trips in a day. And all these 41 trips, we having about 3,700 passengers being commuted on daily basis. For us at Lagos State Ferry Services, until we are able to transport 500,000 passengers on daily basis, we are not going to stop.
Water transportation is the intentional movement of water over large distances using vessels. It's known to be one of the fastest means of moving from one place to another. And the Lagos State government says the sector is open for more investors. Titilayo Aberewo, Channels Television News.
Perhaps the one economic news in the outgone week is the release of the second quarter gross domestic product figures for Nigeria. That report shows an economic growth of 5.1% for the second quarter of the 2021 relative to the same period in 2020. What is the implication of this recovery, especially relative to Nigeria's economic growth pattern since 2019? To take a look at this, I'm being joined by data and information consultant Babajide Ogusawa. Great to see you.
Good evening, Amarachi.
Good evening. You have been meeting with my other colleagues, so I know you're used to them already. But let's dig right into it, okay? The GDP result has social, political, and economic significance. What do these latest figures mean?
It means there's good news and there's bad news. And I'll talk a bit about the good and the bad news later. But regarding the GDP, there are three questions that we must answer. The first is, when last did Nigeria have this sort of 5% GDP growth? 1. 2 is, what does the GDP report really tell us? And 3, what does the GDP report fail to tell us? So let's start with the first. When did Nigeria have 5% growth prior to now? And the evidence shows the reason why this is big news is that the last time we saw a 5% economic growth of 5% was in 2014. In other words, in the last 7 years, we haven't seen this sort of GDP growth. 1. Now, the second thing is, what exactly led to this economic growth? What sectors out of the Nigeria's 46 sectors, economic sectors gave us or led this sort of growth? The report shows that 3 sectors topped the charts. Trade, number 1. Number 2, telecommunication. And number 3, the road transportation sector. It was these three sectors that gave us the sort of growth rate that the government is celebrating. These three sectors, the trade sector, telecommunication and information sector, which is the second sector, and the third sector, road transport, accounted for approximately a third of economic activity in the country. Now, the third thing is, what doesn't this report say? This report doesn't say anything about if citizens are satisfied with the quality of governance. Neither does this report say anything about the quality of life. So to sum it up for a common man, here's what this report really says. Right. Visualize a vehicle, a car. The GDP report tells you how fast the car is going. It doesn't just tell you what direction the car is going.
So would that be, the impact of this 5% growth?
And that's the challenge. And that's what I mean by good and bad news. The good news is that there's growth. The bad news is that we're not seeing value. And I would like to explain that with you with just one example before we look at the actual figures. And the example is, Amachi, imagine if you are on a salary, for the purpose of this discussion, of 100 naira last year. And if I choose to increase your salary by 5% from 100 naira, that means you'll get 5 naira. 100 naira last year, a 5% growth on the 100, which means an additional 5 naira for you. But if your salary were 500 naira, and I increased it just by 2%, it means that you'll get an additional 10 naira, even though it was just a 2% increase. And that is really the summary of GDP. What we've seen is, prior to now, the economy wasn't growing as fast, but because the base was higher, there was more value created. So let's take a look at the exact figures so that we can understand what it means relative to other periods, because growth is good, but value is better. So we see, for instance, in 2019, that big number, 16.9 trillion naira. That was the GDP as at the second quarter of 2019. And we were able to achieve those sort of numbers even though the economy grew by 6%, by 2%. So a 2% growth in the second quarter of 2019 led to a 16.9 trillion naira GDP. And like the example I gave you before we took a look at this, it was because the base was already big. Now let's look at what we have today. We have 5% GDP, yes, which is the best result, even looking at all the second quarters that we've seen previously. Well, a 5% on what is the question we should ask ourselves? And it is a 5% of a low number. So yes, we have a 5% GDP, but now the GDP is only 16.7 trillion naira relative to a 16.9 trillion naira. It could be a bit confusing, but the summary is value is often better than growth. And that's why I use the example of what if your salary were 100 naira last year, and if I increased it by 5%, all you get is 5 naira. But if your salary were 500 naira, and I just increased it by 2%, you get more money in real terms. And that is what we should focus on. Not just growth, let's focus on creating value. How do we create value as a nation? Productivity. Over the time, we focus on growth. If we look at growth and we talk about growth, we need to ask ourselves, growth on what? What are we growing? From where?
So what value then has been placed on the common man via these figures that we're looking at?
So for the common man, some economists will want to look at not just looking at today's results, to look at what has happened prior and since this government has been in place. And that's what we should look at really, to be able to look at what sort of growth and development, because growth without development isn't complete. And the evidence shows less than 5% growth all throughout in 2015. The standard will be for an economy that has a population growth of approximately 3%. You need an economic growth of more than 3% for you to have some semblance of improved standard of living. We didn't get 3% in 2016. 2016 was more negative growth than even positive. 2017. Do
you have the figures for 2021 at least?
Yes.
Or 2020?
But what this has shown is that prior to now, the economy has been either in negative territory, in territory of between 0.1% to 2.5, 2.6%. Now we see 5%. there's some reason to smile, but there isn't sufficient reason to laugh. And that is what we need to remember. Some reason to smile, but these reasons are not sufficient.
Because
for
we
us.
still don't have enough. That's what you're trying to say.
Because we still don't have enough. And we need to always remember the base. Reason to smile, but you're laughing. Reason to smile, but not sufficient reason
thank you
to laugh.
so much. We never have enough time to have these conversations, but thank you. Thank you so much for coming. When the News at 10 returns, communities in Bayelsa State complain about degradation of the environment by oil companies and call the government to speed up cleanup efforts. That's in our community report tonight. Stay with us. Welcome back. As many as 500 persons have been arrested over the last 6 months while trying to traffic in about 2 million kilograms of various illicit substances worth over 100 billion naira. And that's according to the chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Brigadier General Buba Marwa. He said this during an interview with journalists in Yola, the Adamawa state capital. The NDLEA boss applauds President Muhammadu Buhari for his resolve and commitment towards tackling the age-long menace and says it's impressed by how much has been achieved in the war against illicit drugs with the unwavering support of the presidency.
The bandits, the insurgents, the kidnappers, rapists, murderers, assassins, they all use substances because people will not go after kidnapping 200, 300 children if they were in their right minds. Definitely the use of this correlation between drugs and insecurity has been established and it is proven. Secondly, the use of the funds generated by the drug business is also used to facilitate this insecurity. And so looking at these two together, it is our objective in the NDLEA to block access and availability of drugs in all its ramifications, from its cultivation to its production to its marketing, importation, exportation, and so on. We are standing up on this assignment to the best of our abilities. And when we seize substances, however little, if it is 1 kilo seized, we know that this is 1 kilo less accessible to the streets and less accessible in terms of funding.
It's one of the crime stories, but in Yobe State, where cases of sexual and gender-based violence is said to have increased with over 25% in the last 1 year. That's according to the network of civil society organizations in the state, which is expressing concern over the increasing rape cases and other sexual and gender-based violence against both male and female minors.
The cases of sexual and gender-based violence is becoming endemic, with these kind of minors, both female and male, sexually abused. Although in Yobe State, the government has signed into law the 2018 Penal Code Amendment Bill, which stipulates life imprisonment for all offenders, but the cases continue to grow daily. To reduce stigmatization and foster peaceful coexistence in the affected communities, a group, Hope Interactive, is building capacity of volunteers and survivors on sexual and gender-based violence.
There are a lot of challenges that were identified in the community because we have undertake some a baseline survey, and we understood there are a lot of cases of violence against women. Our expectation is to empower women, to give them more voice, to be able to stand out and talk in the community, to be able to have a space in the decision making.
A lot of women are not opening up because they are scared of the stigmatization in this community. So they are scared if maybe I say what is my problem, people might begin to stigmatize me, most especially when you talk about the case of rape. It doesn't just happen to just women alone, but you will see a woman that her daughter is being raped. She's scared of saying it because there's this belief that if a lady is being raped, maybe she might not get a husband that will marry her.
The participants explained that they have acquired more knowledge to enlighten the society as well as give good parenting for their children, while the resource persons are optimistic of involving women in the decision making in order to mitigate the challenge.
I have learned to be, to give out a good parenting security to my children, to the society at large. And also, I have learned that women are not, the society consider women as the lawless. They don't have as in rights, and sometimes women face a denial of rights and resources simply because they are women. That is gender violence.
When there are more women, the survivors will be more free to express what they feel about what happened to them, and they will have confidence in trying to voice out their problem.
With the increase in both sexual and domestic violence, participants unanimously agree that all hands must be on deck to ensure that perpetrators are brought to book through stiffer punishments.
While the news and report of oil spillage is just a story in the news for some people, to residents of Ikarama in Yenagoa local government area of Bayelsa State, it is their reality. The residents who lament the impact of spillage on their everyday life are calling for proper remediation. In our community report tonight, we take a look at how residents in some host communities cope with the degradation of their environment.
The flame shooting into the evening sky means different things in the Ikarama community in Yenagoa local government area of Bayelsa State. To some, it is the start of another business day, while to others, it is the end of livelihoods. Ikarama has experienced a series of oil spills of different proportions. The situation is such that almost everything that should yield from the ground has been decimated.
Our farming lands, the crops are no longer doing well because of crude for some years now. Now it affects us very badly because of that. For that sake, sometimes we find it difficult to even care for our children.
When we plant cocoyam, potato, all cassava, all these things we plant, nothing they germinate well again. Rope, now it will come out for some areas. With a suffer.
A dig of less than 3 feet into the ground spews crude oil from numerous spills. If the land is this bad for farmers, one shudders to think of how the fishermen cope. The case is just as bad.
We've been talking about these issues that the farmlands in the Ikarama community has been is degraded to the extent that we need proper remediation. Not this normal routine remediation where you come and excavate the soil and then leave it that you've done remediation. We need the kind of remediation that has been recommended by UNEP.
The people have lost a lot. They have been shortchanged in terms of productivity, in terms of fishing, farming, and all of that. And you know our people's main occupation is fishing and farming. And if this is happening, you know the consequences, even in terms of health.
The situation has prompted this meeting where residents of affected communities air their frustrations. A communique is then read out to all companies operating in their communities.
Construction of modern hospital in all host communities, establishment of skill acquisition centers in each of the clans that make up certain Izo local government, improvements and extension of electrification, and constant supply of diesel to communities whose power supply can no longer meet the increasing population. We are saying that surveillance contracts are to be given to host communities directly.
Response by all communities on this matter has either been off the record or mute. But with their lives under threat, the residents remain adamant to cry out until the situation changes.
indigenous manufacturers may stand to benefit from the Central Bank of Nigeria stopping the supply of dollars to Bureau de Change operators. But this will be if the dollars so saved are now made easily accessible in banks for genuine manufacturers. That's the view of the founder and chairman of Innocent Vehicle Manufacturing, Chief Innocent Chukwuma. Chief Chukwuma told Channels Television's Ladi Akeredolale that taxes were not a problem.
All of us are going, we are buying money from most time I buy export proceeds, almost black market. But I think if they stop giving individuals British change money, I believe there'll be enough in the bank, in the CBN to sell to the people who need the dollar, like us manufacturers. Like sometimes when they're giving dollar cash to people, they won't have enough to give to manufacturers. So I think it's better for manufacturers. The taxation problem is everywhere in the country. And most time, states are coming for payee tax only. Federal governments are coming for company tax. And each of them is going to their own route. But if there's a way the taxes will be together, it is okay. It will be okay for everybody. But I don't think that issue of tax is a major issue because normally I pay every month. Yes, and I pay VAT every month. So when you manage your tax very well, you won't have issue of tax because if you are sure you keep the record very well and pay tax to this and tax to this, it's not issue. But when you compare it for so long, most times it will be a problem.
You can watch the full interview with Chief Chukwuma. It airs on Newsnight right here on Channels Television tomorrow, Monday, August 30th, 2021 at 9 p.m. On to health issues now. The industrial action by the National Association of Resident Doctors continues. Their colleagues from outside the country are getting worried. Nigerian medical practitioners outside the country say they're watching with keen interest and hoping for a resolution of the deadlock in negotiations between government and Resident Doctors Association. While the face-off lasts, there is worry on one side about the patients who are suffering as a result of this, as well as a likely exodus of doctors from Nigeria to other countries. This was demonstrated by the hundreds who have turned up for a recent recruitment exercise. Speaking to Channels Television in Pretoria, South Africa, the president of the Nigerian Doctors Forum, South Africa, Dr. Emeka Uwu, said it is quite sad that the recent developments could result in the loss of many doctors trained at relatively low costs when the nation should be benefiting from their skills.
It is disheartening, to say the least, seeing a barrage of well-trained medical doctors at a relatively low cost to the government, leaving the country to other places. These are well-skilled individuals who could add value to the Nigerian health system, and they are leaving. Of course, I'm here in South Africa. Yeah, we thank South Africa and other countries that are absorbing us because they provide us that platform, at least to operate on, and they provide the basic needs for our families. But it's very disheartening to see that Nigeria is losing in huge numbers well-trained professionals to other countries. We already have a depleted health system in terms of manpower.
Back home, the Nigerian Medical Association is throwing its weight behind resident doctors, medical and dental consultants. The umbrella body for medical doctors in Nigeria has issued a 21-day ultimatum to the federal government to resolve all lingering industrial actions with all its affiliate members. The ultimatum is part of the resolutions from her National Executive Council meeting in Benin City, the Edo State capital. The NEC also affirms that no doctor shall be victimized for participating in the strike action by NARD. According to the doctors, if the federal government fails to implement the agreements after the expiration of the 21-day notice, NMA shall summon an emergency delegate meeting to review the progress made on the implementation of the agreements. We're back on the foreign scene as the U.S. says its drone strike in Kabul today was successful in eliminating an imminent threat to the airport, where it was winding down evacuations. So according to Captain Bill Urban of U.S. Central Command, a strike hit the target, a vehicle carrying at least one person associated with ISK, and a substantial amount of explosive material was destroyed. Witnesses who saw the strike reported an explosion near the Kabul airport on Sunday, while television footage showed black smoke rising into the sky. There was no immediate word on casualties. Two witnesses said the blast appeared to have been caused by a rocket that struck a house in an area to the northern side of the airport, but there was no immediate confirmation. The U.S. is in its final phase of evacuations from the Kabul airport, and the Taliban says it is ready to take over. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden today arrived at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to honor members of the U.S. military killed in a suicide bomb attack during the evacuation of civilians from Kabul airport last week. Thursday's attack, claimed by ISK, the Afghan affiliate of Islamic State, was the most lethal incident for U.S. service members in Afghanistan in a decade. The bombing took place just outside the gates of the airport, where thousands of people gathered to try to get a flight out since the Taliban returned to power on August 15. The president and his wife, Jill, met with the families of the slain service members. American allies, France and Britain, are preparing to submit a resolution to an emergency United Nations meeting due on Monday, proposing a safe zone in Kabul to try and protect people trying to leave Afghanistan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is convening a meeting on Afghanistan with the UN envoys for Britain, France, the United States, China and Russia, the Security Council's permanent veto-wielding members. Britain's last military flight left Kabul on Saturday after evacuating more than 15,000 people in 2 weeks since the Taliban took over. On Sunday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said in a video that all remaining soldiers, diplomats and civil servants have now left.
As I speak, Sir Laurie Bristow, Her Majesty's ambassador, has finally boarded one of the very last flights from Kabul. All remaining soldiers, diplomats and civil servants have now left.
Britain was at Washington's side from the start of the US-led invasion of Afghanistan that overthrew the then-ruling Taliban for harboring the al-Qaeda militants behind the September 11 attacks. In the meantime, the US says evacuations will continue until the deadline of August 31st. We do have an update on the NMA ultimatum to the federal government. The Ministry of Labour and Employment has rejected the 21-day ultimatum by the Nigeria Medical Association, which it says is in direct collision with the Memorandum of Understanding signed on August 21st, 2021. The NMA had threatened to join the ongoing strike by the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors if the government failed to resolve all the issues contained in the various agreements signed with its affiliate unions. But reacted to the threat in a statement titled Labour Ministry to NMA, your 21-day ultimatum in collision with our MOU, the government argued that the NMA's position was at variance with the timeline stated in the Memorandum of Agreement. Again, the Ministry of Labour and Employment has rejected the 21-day ultimatum given to the federal government by the Nigerian Medical Association, which it says is in direct collision with the Memorandum of Understanding signed August 21st, 2021. Sports News now. The Tigers head coach Mike Brown admits Côte d'Ivoire were the better team after his team suffered their first defeat at the FIBA AfroBasket, losing 68-77 in their final Group C match earlier today. Nigeria finished second in the group and will on Tuesday play the team that finished third in Group D for a spot in the quarterfinal, and Coach Brown wants the team to see it as an opportunity to the players to get back on track. Meanwhile, Bosel Molayo has won Team Nigeria's second gold medal at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics in the women's 79-kilogram powerlifting category. Omalayo had a best lift of 141 kilograms to set a new Paralympic record and finished first ahead of Natalia Olinik of Ukraine and Vera Muratovia of the Russian Olympic Committee. Her victory takes Nigeria's medal tally to 4 in total, with 2 gold and 2 bronze medals. To the Premier League, Manchester United set a Premier League record of 28 away games without defeat as a Mason Greenwood strike 10 minutes from time snatched a fortunate 1-0 win at Wolves earlier today. The build-up to Greenwood's goal was not without controversy as Paul Pogba appeared to catch Ruben Neves only for Mike Dean to ignore the appeals of the midfielder. Heung-min Son's first-half free kick proved to be the winner as Tottenham continued their perfect start of the season as they moved top of the table with a narrow victory over Watford. Patrick Bamford netted against his former club as Leeds United came from behind to claim a 1-0 draw at Burnley. Finally tonight, the life and times of Nigerian music legend Sir Victor Waifo has touched a younger generation of artists. The multi-instrumentalist, known for his exceptional dexterity on the guitar, birthing him the alias Guitar Boy, which is also the title for one of his popular projects, died at the age of 80 after a brief illness.
Nigerian music legend Sir Victor Waifo's showmanship was matchless. The theatrics that surrounds his performances embellishes his obvious musical talent. He was a perfect The Guitar Boy showman. As the light falls on his time in this world, his legacy, especially within the music circle, lives on. His nephew and adopted son, Peter Waifo, is also a recording artist who only recorded a collaboration with Waifo just days before he passed. He said Victor Waifo raised him as one of his children after his father Clement Waifo passed when he was only 7 years.
It's always fun to be with. Whenever I'm with him, I always have this joy. I always have this happiness inside of me. I always feel this greatness inside of me. There was one flute he did. He vetted it in another form. He called me. There was one guitar he also did. He made the first strings to become double. It has never been like that before. Instead of 6 strings, it was now 7. He also have a guitar that has 3 strings of guitar and 3 strings of bass. That means he can actually play the guitar and the bass together.
Joromi, I want you to love me.
Within the raving Afrobeat lane, singers Simi and J1 respectively sampled the chorus of one of his most successful numbers, Joromi.
Joromi, oh my baby, Joromi.
J1 in particular is heavily distraught about the passing of the legend.
Believe me, when you talk about Nigerian music industry, once you are calling the likes of, King Sunny Ade, you are calling the likes of Sir Victor Waifo, you are calling, Ebenezer Obey, all these people. They are the people that we grew up listening. I always say that I did not grow up listening to Michael Jackson.
And as the music community, government, fans and music lovers mourn the one who taught the world never to run away from mermaids if they saw one, his many classics will definitely live on to tell generations yet unborn about his musical prowess.
Living legend! Living legend!
Victor Owaifo, a true legend indeed. And the main news again. 3 commuters rescued from bandits in Kaduna State, but 2 people are killed in Kajuru local government area. And that'll be all on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night and stay safe.